No, you wanna be sitting.
I'm gonna sit. It's good.
Yeah,
It's on the chair.
Oh, it's in the chair. Yes.
the
Okay.
chair. Good?
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Looks good. Yeah.
Oh, come on.
You come. You come.
Get this one first. This one done first. This one will be good.
Yeah, really.
Okay, go ahead.
This talk will also be given by Sheikh Mustafa as a brief introduction. Sheikh Mustafa has completed a Bachelor of Information in Computer Science at UC Irvine, a Bachelor of Arts in Theology and Islamic Law from the European Institute of Islamic Sciences in France, and a Master's in Islamic Studies from the University of Gloucestershire in the UK.
No worries.
He also studied Islamic sciences for a year and then took on a math in Lebanon, India, and spent another year studying in Cairo, Egypt. Sheikh Mustafa later completed the traditional Iftat program at Darul Iftat Birmingham, granting him the traditional title of Mufti, or specialist in Islamic law. He has authored several books, served the Muslim community as a scholar and imam for 2 decades, founded the California Islamic University, and is currently the religious director at the Islamic Center of Irvine, the executive member of the Council of North America, and a senior fellow at the Hawthorne Institute. You ready, Sheikh?
Ready.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Alright, so I'm giving the topic for like the 30th time. Speak about the queer movement, LGBT movement. So I'm gonna focus, I've been asked to focus on a specific aspect of it, and that's more the social elements of how to deal with the movement itself. So I'm going to recap just a few things real quickly, and then I'm going to move on to focusing on that part. Okay, so first of all, what is the LGBTQ movement? Right? Who can tell me what the L stands for? Lesbian. The G. Okay. The B. Bisexual. The T. Transgender. The Q. Queer. What about the other I that came afterwards? What is it? I heard intersex and any other? Inquiring as well. There's two methods. So there's difference of opinion among the people of the movement of what the I stands for. All right, and there's an A. What does the A stand for? Asexual or there's another difference of opinion. I even forgot myself what the A stands for. There's a difference of opinion as well. And then they just kept on adding letters, so they put a plus. Now, who can tell me what does the word queer mean? Does anyone know what the word queer actually means? Can anyone like turn this microphone up? By the way, I'm gonna have to like eat it, like project my voice almost. And yeah. Different. Queer means different. Does anyone know what the English meaning of the word queer originally meant? Anyone? Anyone? Sister section? Any sister in the front row? Okay? No? Yes. Does it mean weird? Yes, it means weird. Exactly. So it means weird. And that's why the word queer is actually a great summary of the movement, because you don't need the other letters. Because all the other letters represent one of two things. It represents an abnormal or weird manifestation of sexuality or attraction, or it represents an abnormal or weird manifestation of your views on gender, or what happens, what you think you are in terms of your own gender. So it's really about two concepts. There's two concepts that have all these letters been added to them. And these two concepts actually can be encompassed by one word, which is Q, which is queer, which is actually a really good word. And it's a good word from an Islamic perspective, and it's a word that people who identify with this movement, are promoters of the movement and the ideas, they actually like that word too. So it actually works both ways, right? So that's pretty much what the movement is about. Now what does Islam say about homosexuality and why? Without getting into details, I'm assuming that everyone who's at a mass conference understands that homosexuality, the practice of homosexuality, is haram in Islam. And what's the reason why? Right? The reason why has to do with, one, because Allah said so. Alright, and where did Allah say so, by the way? Where is this mentioned in the Quran? Can anyone tell me? Approximately, like, it's mentioned in what part of the Quran? What story? Right? About the stories of Prophet Lut, right? All the surahs that cover Prophet Lut in the Quran. And basically Prophet Lut is explaining that there are a few issues that are a problem with it. Number one, that it's wrong. Allah doesn't want this. Number two, that it's abnormal, right? It's not normal, it's not natural for people to do it. And number three, that there's some level of immorality involved in this type of behavior. What does Islam say about imitating the opposite gender? And why? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, prohibited men from dressing like women, prohibited women from dressing like men. And the reason why is because Allah has created male and Allah has created female, and He created them distinct from one another, and He did not want them to try to adjust or change the creation of Allah in any way where you're permanently changing your body, or you're permanently changing the way in which you manifest the gender which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you. Next thing is it possible that Muslims misunderstood the story of Prophet Lut? Like some Christians are reinterpreting their text and saying that's not the case. Some Jews are reinterpreting their text. And there's a small little group of what are called progressive Muslims who are saying the same thing. And they're saying that Prophet Lut was not talking against homosexuality as a practice, but rather he was concerned that these angels in human form were going to be raped. So when it's consensual, it's okay. When it's non-consensual, it's not okay. That is not what the story of Prophet Lut was saying. If you read it carefully, in its proper context, it has been agreed upon by scholars for 1400 years that whether it's consensual or non-consensual, whether it's love or whether it's not love, see, love is love, whether it's in love or not, it is still prohibited in Islam. Okay? Skip some of these points. Okay. Advice to people who are experiencing the feelings of same-sex attraction or gender dysphoria. These are feelings that people have. And if somebody has those feelings, they have to understand that there's a difference between having a feeling and acting upon that feeling. They're not the same thing. Is having the feeling haram? No. Some Muslims is like, I have a feeling I want to try drinking alcohol one time in my life. I want to drink some beer. Is the feeling haram itself? No, if you don't act upon it. Now, if you fantasize about it and you keep on thinking, keep on wanting, I wonder what it's like, I'm going to try it in my mind, I'm going to pretend like I'm drinking, then that's wrong. Okay? You're going to be held accountable for that. But the natural feeling that just comes to your mind and you're not, dwelling on it, that you're not going to be held accountable for that in Islam, from an Islamic perspective. If you act upon it, you're going to be held accountable. So people who are having feelings of same-sex attraction towards the same gender, or people who are having feelings that, I feel like I'm trapped in the wrong body. I think that I should have been a girl, I should have been a boy, or I should have been, a cat, or an animal, or something else, right? I have something going on with me, but I don't know what's happening. These feelings are not intrinsically forbidden and haram. So that means that as Muslims, when we look at someone who has those feelings, but they're not engaging in the practice of that, they're not cross-dressing, they're not taking hormones, they're not trying to change their body or something like that, but they're having those feelings, you should not look down upon them as if they're doing something haram. So if you have a friend of yours that comes and tells you, hey, you know what, I'm really struggling, I have these thoughts and I don't know what's going on, I don't know how to solve these problems, rather than be like, ew, you're disgusting, you're haram, get away from me. That is not how you're going to support your friend. You support your friend by saying, wow, I had no idea this was going on, and I want to try to help you, deal with these feelings and these thoughts, but without doing something that is haram or against what Allah wants us to do. But if you have a second type of friend who comes to you and saying, you know what, I have these feelings, and I already got a boyfriend, by the way, and I think there's nothing wrong with this. I'm going to do it because if Allah created me this way, and if Allah made me this way, I can go ahead and do whatever I want. And I'm telling you as my friend, I want your support. The difference is, in the first scenario, they want your support to process and deal with the feelings that they have, but they're not insisting on doing something wrong. They're not asking you to support doing something haram. In the second scenario, they are asking you to support them in doing something that's haram because they simply don't care or they want to reinterpret things. You're not going to deal with both cases in the same way. Now, if you are a person or you know someone who's dealing with that, the first thing you have to do is you have to understand that people have been influenced. Everybody's influenced by politics. Everyone is influenced by culture. And today, the idea of same-sex attraction being natural and normal, such that you can act upon it, and the idea of gender dysphoria or gender nonconformity as being natural and normal, such that you can act upon it, has been normalized. There's an over-representation in the media. And if you embrace that lifestyle, there's an entire queer lobby that's ready to love bomb you, get you a bunch of money, get you to give some speeches about how you're one of the Muslims who's broken away from the community and you've discovered your true and authentic self and all that stuff. So if you are experiencing those feelings, you have to understand you should not feel a need to come out and reveal your sins and tell everyone that this is the way I feel and I'm going to do what I feel like. But you can tell somebody your feelings and tell them that you need help, but you should be very careful of whom you tell. If you had a drug addiction, think about who you would tell and who you wouldn't tell, because you're not going to just go and tell every random person. You're going to be very selective in the type of people that you talk to, because you don't know how they're going to deal with you. You don't know how they're going to respond. So you have to think about that very carefully. But I'm sure you have one friend or two friends that can actually maybe give you some good advice, or maybe give you some, direction or something like that. There's a great online community of Muslims who have same-sex attraction or who feel they experience asexuality and they have no romantic attractions whatsoever. They don't understand why, or they have some other issues going on. They somehow fall in the category of queer feelings, which are not haram, but queer actions and queer identity and queer lifestyle. That is a problem. That's a huge problem. So it's called straightstruggle.com, and it's a fantastic website where people help each other. And there's an even better resource. It's a podcast called Away Beyond the Rainbow, where there is a Muslim who has same-sex attraction. And he has 85 episodes. I did 4 episodes with him, where he talks about very good research on resources on how people can overcome things like that. Right? So if people are trying to find out, well, what happened to me? Why are these, why am I going through these things and all of that stuff? There's a lot of resources in his Way Beyond the Rainbow podcast, which can actually help people answer questions like, why did this happen to me? Why am I experiencing these feelings? Can I change? Will I ever be able to overcome it? Am I not able to overcome it? There's actually a lot of things that can be done. One of them is a framework. It's called the SIT framework by Dr. Yarhouse. It's called the Sexual Identity Therapy Framework. There's a lot of things that you could potentially do. Here's one of the worst things you could do. Go to a psychologist, therapist, counselor. One of the absolute worst things you can do. Why? Because they're trained in what's called affirmative therapy. And affirmative therapy basically means let's say, for example, you feel like you're a different gender, and you started cross-dressing. And you affirmative therapy means that if you're biologically a male, decided, no, I think I'm a female, they will affirm you and say, because you think this way, because you feel this way, we're going to help you to transition your pronoun and your name and get you some hormones and all of that stuff. But if you decide that you want to go back, even though you have these feelings, but you don't want to be, you want to be with your biological gender, because you said that's the way Allah created me, despite the fact that I have these feelings. Then guess what? If they try to tell you, hey, you should stick with your biological gender, what's going to happen to them? They will lose their counseling license, which they spent 3 to 5 years pursuing. So all that time, all that effort, and they're going to be punished for telling you to remain in your biological gender. But if they tell you to switch over to your own psychological identity, rather than psychological gender that you have in your own mind, they will be rewarded for that. And you see, wow, this is a compassionate therapist and a compassionate counselor. So you got to be very cautious about that. Okay, on to the subject that I was told to focus on specifically. Should Muslims support queer rights or not? That's almost like asking the question, should Muslims support prostitute rights? Should we support prostitute rights? I heard absolutely no. Are prostitutes human beings? Do they have any rights? Do they have a right to food if they're starving? Do they have a right to get health care in general? Do they have a right to, I don't know, express all the other rights that you have, right? This is a trick question. The Rainbow Lobby phrased this question exactly in this way because it's a trick question. What do you mean by supporting LGBTQ rights? The right to what? Right to food? The right to live? The right to housing? Rent to them? Right to what? It's like saying, do you support Israeli rights? What does that mean? Support them in what? Support them in their Zionism and this genocide of the Palestinian people? Absolutely not. Support them in the fact that yes, they're still human beings, even if they happen to be an Israeli citizen, you don't have to kill them on sight. Yeah, we can go with that, but the wording is extremely important, and this is where Muslims get really confused. Because you can have one group of Muslims and be like, well, they're still human beings. Of course they're still human beings. But it also, when you say, yes, I support people who identify as LGBTQIA++, I support their rights, it actually means that I want to normalize queer behavior in society, and I think there's nothing wrong with it, and I think we should actually promote it within a community, within society, within schools, and all sorts of other things that are attached to it. Then we got a huge problem. And that's why when people came up with this idea of how should we frame this, who do you think is framing this? The queer lobby is the most powerful minority lobby in the entire world, particularly in the United States. Maybe right behind Zionism, or actually potentially ahead of Zionism. It's debatable. But they're both minorities, and they're both among the most powerful minorities in the entire world. So they came up with this phrasing. And that's why Muslims should be more clever and not fall into these ideas, right? So you have to understand, when you say, oh, should we support LGBTQ rights? You have to understand, well, what is this question really? If I say yes, what does it mean? And if I say no, what does it mean? If you say yes, you're wrong. And if you say no, you're wrong. You have to reframe the question. And those of you who know who Malcolm X is, our brother, Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, read his autobiography, or at least you should watch the movie. Has anyone read the autobiography of Malcolm X? Raise your hand. Quite a few, mashallah. Has anyone watched the movie by Spike Lee?
The movie's garbage.
All right, you still gotta use Good Angel, by the way, to filter that, because there's a lot of problems in it, right? If you don't read books, there's some good in it, but it's not the same as the book at all. Anyways, He said that we should never simply accept the framing that people are giving us. We should define our own terms, redefine our own questions. And that's why you have to be smarter, and you have to make sure you're asking the question, say, what do you mean by that? Let me tell you what I support. I believe that all human beings, regardless of what kind of horrible, immoral behavior they're doing, they still have certain human rights, and we support their rights to basic things and not to be harmed and stuff like that. But if you mean the promotion or the normalization of a type of behavior that's harmful for society and our Creator and most other religions in the past, except the ones who have recently, modified their religions due to political pressure, they all understood that there's something very harmful about this type of behavior. No, we don't believe in normalizing and promoting that. Right? So here's a perfect example. 1973. 1973 was a very important year because there is until today something in psychology that psychologists use called the DSM. Does anyone know what the DSM is? Raise your hand if you know what the DSM is. Okay, what does the DSM stand for? You can tell me.
Diagnostic Manual Statistic?
Close, yes, exactly. Does anyone know the whole thing? DSM, the S was missing. Diagnostic Manual. We got the M and we got the D. Do you know? She's pointing at you. If someone's pointing at you, that means you must know the answer.
The Diagnostic Statistics Manual?
Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of what? Of what? Of mental illnesses. That's right. The DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illnesses to define what is a mental illness, and lets therapists figure out, look it up and say, this is the condition that I'm seeing in you. This is what's being happened. And we're at the DSM-5, version 5 right now. In 1973, they had an earlier version of this. And what happened was, they decided before this, they've had this manual for decades, way before 1973. And homosexuality was listed as a mental disorder. Very clear. Everyone diagnosed said, you have a mental disorder. What happened in 1973? The American Psychiatric Association decided we are going to remove homosexuality from the list of mental illnesses. Question is why? Why was it removed? Was there some new experiment that was conducted to show that, hey, this is not a mental illness? Was it some new research that came out, groundbreaking biological research in laboratories that they were in the test tubes and they were figuring this out and said, we have just discovered and we were wrong. We need to go ahead and remove this because the science was incorrect. Science is sometimes incorrect. Many times you get incorrect. You made a mistake. You thought in the 1990s that eating eggs is very bad for you, causing high cholesterol, and there was all these campaigns about don't eat so many eggs, and then all of a sudden they changed and they're like, no, eggs are actually good for you, you can eat the yolk, everything's fine. In the past they were saying, you know what, if you have a low-fat diet, then you're not going to be as fat. So you should eat things that are low-fat, and that's what causes you to get fat. And then you realize, no, that's actually not the case. There's healthy fats, there's not healthy fats, carbs are resulting in this, and all sorts of things where science has reversed itself so many times. Was there a scientific reversal in 1973 why they delisted it? No. What was the real reason? It was political pressure on the lobby of psychologists that says you better remove this from the manual, and they yielded from the manual, and they said, this was a beautiful statement that was made by one of the people who was part of the top psychologists. He said, this was the first time in the history of healthcare that a diagnosis or a lack of diagnosis was decided by popular vote rather than by scientific evidence. This is what happened. So the point is, people are going to be influenced by politics. People are going to be influenced by culture, and therefore, if we are talking about the normalization of a type of behavior which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us is not only forbidden, but it's also harmful, and it's also unnatural, then a Muslim can never support any type of queer ideology ever. America is a pluralistic society. We love the freedom to practice our religion, alhamdulillah, but we don't want to be forced to wear a cross, to wear a swastika, or to wear a rainbow. And therefore, no Muslim should ever be going to work or going to school and saying, you know what? Because I believe in freedom for all and I want to support people and I want to be inclusive and not exclusive, let me wear a rainbow-colored pin at work. This should never happen to a Muslim. You should not be having a rainbow-colored mug for your coffee cup, unless it's the healthy rainbow. There's two types of rainbows I taught my kids. There is the good rainbow, and there's the evil rainbow. The good rainbow, my daughter came up with this one, actually. It's genius. The good rainbow is the one that has the two clouds on the sides, and it's got the things that kids buy, and they put like little stickers up and stuff. That is the good rainbow, right? The evil rainbow is the rainbow that represents the queer movement. Because it doesn't just represent them, it is a promotion of that type of behavior, that type of lifestyle, which is harmful to humanity and to society and to the people themselves and to families and to just society in general. So we don't force people to celebrate Eid. We should never do that. Christians don't force us to celebrate Christmas. Jews don't force people to celebrate Hanukkah. So why should other people, any movement, force anyone else to celebrate Pride Month and wear rainbows? And if you don't wear it, then you're going to be in trouble. They tell you, make sure you wear the rainbow pin to work. And if you don't wear the rainbow pin, you're going to get called in by your manager. And you're going to say, what's wrong with you? Are you a homophobe? Are you a transphobe? Are you a bigot? Are you a this? This is what's happening right now in the United States of America. So a Muslim can never participate in a pride parade. A Muslim can never wear a rainbow mask. A Muslim can never initiate a pronoun introduction, especially in an MSA, right? And I see this. It drives me crazy. How can you have a Muslim Student Association meeting and you say, we're going to start with pronoun introductions? And someone tried to do it to me, right? I walked in there, they're like, Brother Sheikh Mustafa joined our group, mashallah. Okay, we're going to start with pronoun introduction. Please state your name and your pronoun. And one person like Maryam, she, I don't even know what it is. She, what is it? He, what is it? Her, yeah. Her, she, her, right? And they're like, Yusuf, you know, he, him. And they're like, it's your turn. I'm like, Mustafa. Figure it out. If you can't figure out that Mustafa and Yusuf is a male name, and that Maryam is a female name, sorry to you. Right? Muslims, by doing pronoun introductions, here's the problem. The problem is that we're trying to make other people who have gender dysphoria feel comfortable in the group by making the other 99.9% of people feel uncomfortable. When it comes to bathrooms, same thing. This is not only an Islamic thing, this is a common sense issue. And that people are really getting tired of. Alhamdulillah. And hopefully we're getting to a place where we're going to be switching around. Now, should Muslims remain neutral, or should Muslims actively oppose queer ideology? Right? And then the other question is being opposed to queer rights a form of discrimination and oppression? Don't we believe in freedom, since we also enjoy freedom in a pluralistic society like the United States of America, right? So the answer is, in most cases, yes, we should actively oppose the queer movement in all ways that we can possibly do so. Why? Because it is not simply recognizing that a group of people exists, but it is trying to normalize a type of behavior that is actually a choice. Now, the feelings may not be a choice, but the behavior itself is a choice. So we are living in a society where people are pressured to identify with pronouns. We are living in a society where you have therapy bans across the country which doesn't even allow, what I mentioned, affirmative therapy. It doesn't allow change-allowing therapy, right? There have been groups who have tried to help people who don't want to have these feelings, to reverse these feelings, and they've all been shut down. So, yeah. 5 minutes? Okay, sure. So let me say the last things, and I want to open it up for questions. Okay, one of the other questions I get, one of the most asked questions that I get is, can I have a friend who's queer? And here's the answer. The answer is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "الرجل على دين خليله," that a person is going to be on the deen, the way of life, the religion of their closest friends. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلُ. Be very careful whom you take as your close friends. What that means is, be careful who you take as your close friends. You can be friendly with anybody. You can be friendly with the drug addict, you can be friendly with the prostitute, you can be friendly with someone who identifies as a cat. You can be friendly with anybody. But who you take as your close friends, they're going to influence you in a very significant way. And you need to know your own personality, you need to make sure you have your religion down, and you need to think about how you're being influenced versus how you're able to influence the other person. So be very careful of whom you take as your friend, and that's your answer. Inshallah, in a nutshell. I'm going to open up for questions, inshallah. This session requires several hours, but this is a short version of the session. Questions, inshallah. From you. Yes, go ahead.
So how do we as Muslims deal with the queers from Palestine or something in protests?
Okay, good question. So I was going to mention that about encampments. So how do you deal with the group Queers for Palestine? Right? It's very challenging to deal with a group that has that name. Right? So if you have, let's say, a movement that you're starting, if you're in control of an encampment that's pro-Palestine, for example, and you are the Muslim Student Association, you should make it very clear. It says, this is what's allowed and this is what's not allowed because we are controlling the protest. If you bring a sign that has a bunch of F words in it, right? You say, you know what? F the Israeli, government, the IDF, and all of that stuff. You know what? Maybe you feel that way. Maybe that's even justified, but we don't use that kind of language. So if you're in control of that, you have to restrict, according to Islamic guidelines, what kind of protocols are going to be put in place. You say, you know what? We don't allow profanity on any of these signs. We're going to check your signs and say you're not allowed to bring this sign to our protest. Likewise, we're not going to allow certain things which are antithetical to Islamic values to be promoted at the protest. So you don't get to bring your own movement. You're not going to come in and be like, you know what? Believe that Jesus is your Savior. And we're Christians who love Palestine. You know what? We're very happy that you're Christian. We're very happy that you're supporting Palestine. But that first statement is not welcome at this protest because that's something that's against Islamic values, so we can't allow you to do that. Likewise, this is the challenge. When a group says Christians for Palestine or Jews for Palestine, they're not saying that we want you to accept that Jesus is God and that we're supporting Palestine. But when you say queers for Palestine, it's getting the message of we want you to normalize the queer lifestyle and we are a group of people that is supporting Palestine. So it becomes this idea of identity being equated with normalization of a type of behavior. When it comes to a group like a religious group, or when it comes to a group that is a ethnic group, you don't have that built in. So my suggestion would be to tell the Muslim leadership, say, listen, we appreciate that you're here. You're welcome here. And we're very happy that you're supporting the Palestinian people. And you're supporting that they actually have human rights and that they're human beings and they're being dehumanized across the board. We really support that and we want you here. But your signage and your messaging should not be in contradiction with our Islamic values. So you know what? Be here. You can, come here and, be part of the protest, but we can't allow you to be promoting an identity that's against Islamic values. If you would like to be here, because you care about the Palestinian people, then be here with our guidelines and our rules. And if they say, no, if you don't allow us to bring the rainbow flag, then we're not supporting the Palestinian people. Now, you know what the reality is? They don't give a damn about the Palestinian people. Honestly, I'm telling you. If that's their requirement, they don't give... I know, I got in trouble. I don't use these words in front of my children, all right? They don't give a care. We're going to kind of talk on the way home. They don't give a care about the Palestinian people. It means that they're there to promote their own movement because they believe in intersectionality, and they say, if we cannot promote our movement in order to promote your movement, then we're not promoting your movement. That means they don't care about the Palestinian people at all. You will be able to figure out whether any group really cares about the people and they're genuine about the cause by telling them, these are our requirements. You're going to come in to support the Palestinian people, you're welcome. You want to come in to promote your own cause and then you're going to promote the Palestinian people, then you're not welcome. And guess what? You're going to know who your real allies are and who your fake allies are. And I think that's healthier for the Muslim community to set those guidelines and those boundaries.
I think we're gonna have to cut it.
Done? Okay, so hopefully that helps. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah. Jazakallah khairan. Oh. Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh Mustafa Umar. We're gonna have a little break for now. If you guys want to eat, there's food in the back, $10 a plate, and the bazaar is also open. We're gonna have a break till 6:15, inshallah. Jazakallah.
Yes.
What's next? It's a bazaar? What's next?
A break. There's gonna be a talk about jihad al-nafs, but بعد كمان
It's a break. Can you get the... Thanks.